Good evening, everybody. I am Julie Barrett, founder of Conservative Ladies of Washington, and we are back with another edition of our virtual tour for 2024 elections with another Washington State endorsed candidate, Brandon Beynon, who is running for the State House of Representatives in Legislative District 31. This is an open seat, and I believe it's you and one other Republican on the ballot. Am I correct in that? Is there a Democrat in this race?
There's two Democrats, one of which didn't even file a voter statement. No one knows who it is. And then there is a second Democrat who has no chance of winning.
This is a red district. This is a solid red district. The member who is resigning, it's Robertson, right?
Yep, Eric Robertson.
Eric Robertson is not running for re-election, so that makes this an open seat. And Brandon ran in the district for the other position in 2022. He was endorsed by Conservative Ladies of Washington in 2022, and we're proud to be endorsing him again. Brandon is a very conservative candidate. He would make a great addition to the Washington State Legislature. Brandon, why don't you go ahead and tell people a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your campaign, why you're doing this?
Well, let's rewind to 2022. I first decided to run because I needed help from my state representatives. And when I reached out for help, I noticed that the only one that really was there for helping me was the one that was on his way out the door. Morgan Irwin, who had already announced his retirement, helped me, and then the other representative didn't respond to any calls or emails, and that's when the light bulb went off, because I've been a member of the party for a while, and I've realized that we don't ever see him. And at that point, I kind of took to heart that the job's name is representative, and how can you represent anybody if you're not around and you don't speak to your constituents, much less your party members, who are the core of your base that support you. So I decided to run back then, and I came very close, actually, considering he is a very deeply entrenched establishment Republican. He's now the minority speaker of the House, and I do believe that that's probably why when I decided to run again, well, I originally wasn't going to run this time. I had gotten a speech from everybody that I did a great job and built a lot of political stock, and that I should wait my turn and don't be the chihuahua that bites the ankles of the incumbents, and was told that everybody was running again. And then Friday before filing week, Eric announced his retirement and endorsed my opponent, the Republican. But since then, I have secured all of the major endorsements. He only has endorsements of basically the person I ran against and people that aren't in office anymore or are retiring. So I think that shows you a lot of where the faith of the party is. At this time around, I mean, both times this is where I stand, but this time around, it's a little. I'm more calculated. I ran a little angry last time, I would say. This time
more strategic, maybe.
Yeah, and I learned a lot. I very few people win their first runs. I credit actually that first run to being able to have a successful second run here. Yeah. So I've learned a lot. I've learned how to play the process, how to fundraise, get endorsements. So this time around, it's a little less about partisan politics and more about fixing a broken government. Obviously, even though I ran against Drew, I would be his seatmate this time around. So we'll have to learn to live in harmony. I'm sure he does not want to see my face, but that's probably a story for some of the conversations here later. I'm running on the platform that we need a businessman in office. We need more businessmen in office. We need more average citizens in office. That the lawyer politician or Ivy League educated lawyer politician is not working for us anymore. It seems like 80% of them are, and they just don't seem to be in touch with what goes on in our districts and in our lives as average middle-class people. And I have seen so many good people leave the state, and to steal a line from another candidate because it was too good not to use. He basically said it was either run or run, and I don't want to run away, so I decided to run for office. And obviously, by the antics that happened before this run, it just leads me to believe I'm even more on the right track when a lot of the establishment doesn't want a conservative in office, or they're scared of me. So, I think that it just has reaffirmed to me I'm doing the right thing, that I'm doing this for the people. I'm doing this because I care. I'm doing this to save our state. I'm doing this because I'm tired of seeing our government take everything out of our hands, our money, our ability to run our families, our ability to practice religion. I mean, COVID really brought a lot to the forefront, and is just the amount that they've taken from us and broken has just gotten worse and worse.
Absolutely. And they keep chipping away at it. It's not just that they did it during COVID, but what I've seen in the last couple of sessions is they're preparing for the next emergency. So
Yep.
they are making new laws that will make it easier for them to exercise their emergency powers. So I want to make sure that we let the viewers know that you are an elected PCO in Pierce County. So you have had skin in the game for a while now. How long have you been a PCO?
2018 or 2019.
Okay. So for 5 or 6 years.
Yep.
And you are also a business owner. So you understand how the laws have impacted businesses.
Yes.
Is that something, as a business owner, is that something that you're passionate about? Some of the legislation that has to do with business and the regulations that the legislature has put on our small businesses?
Yes. I run a commercial general contracting company. It was a family company, but my father has basically since retired. We do commercial leasing and construction. So we're a turnkey service. Basically, national or local clients come to us and we find the site and build the site for them and can coordinate the entire process. It's one of my priorities if I get in office to get on the local government committee to be able to work on removing a lot of the minutia and red tape that has built up. It feels at times just trying to do business with cities and L&I and so forth. It's become an adversarial relationship. It used to be a customer service relationship. We were all in it together to build quality buildings, oversight to make sure that things were being done properly. And now it literally feels like they purposely roadblock so that we complain about services so that then they can say we're understaffed and that they can hire more people and just create more red tape and more money, permitting fees, the amount of time it takes. I mean, I'm dealing with a small project in Gig Harbor, Washington right now that literally used to be an over-the-counter permit, and I'm sitting now waiting on 3.5 months, and it's not even in review yet. I mean, I used to be able to go to them, sit down at the counter, and walk away with a permit.
Wow.
And so, yes, it's a passion to make it easier to do business, make it cheaper to do business, therefore bring down the cost of living. I mean, when my clients come to me from out of state, for example, we did a diabetes clinic in Kirkland, Washington. The parent company was out of North Carolina. They've never built in Washington before, and the first words out of my mouth were be prepared for sticker shock. And it ultimately took 4 times the cost to build here that it did in North Carolina.
Wow.
And then when you add horrible legislation like these, climate right. acts, like the gas thing. I mean, on a commercial level, one of the ski slopes, when preemptively hired a climate advisor and decided to remove gas from all of their facilities. So they're now heating with electrical only, and it's going to cost them $6.5 million in equipment to swap out everything from gas to electric. And it's going to cost over $650,000 to bring in that much more power and service into the facilities. And then I don't even know where to begin what the power cost is going to be and the additional drain when we already have a grid that's taxed to its limits, and they continue, we lose our last coal plant in 2025. They want to take gas from us. I mean, when you look at it at a residential level, this is near and dear to me, obviously, because it's
Yeah.
on a residential level. If you're looking at like a multi-use building where it's retail on the bottom and apartments on the top, you're adding $25,000 on top of every residential unit to do electrical heat, not to mention the additional monthly costs,
Right.
and taxing the grid. And we want to move everybody electric cars. I'm all for being a good steward of the planet, but we need to have our grid be, ready for 10 years of growth before we start taking power away from it.
Right. And I'm sure that you saw today that Inslee's giving this $200 credit to people.
Like the Fishy Ferguson checks.
Yes. Yes. I just think like that's such a slap in the face. And I really wonder like who has, I don't want to say dumb, but who's been bamboozled enough to actually like buy that? Like $200 doesn't even pay for 1 month.
Yeah, that's a grocery bill for 3 days almost anymore,
Right.
for a family of 3 or 4.
Right.
And the irony to that is, notice how it always happens around election time. Other states after COVID said, hey, we're flush with all this COVID federal money, we're going to give rebate checks out to our residents. Not Washington. We spent it all and asked for more. Yeah. But now that it's election time, just like Bob Ferguson's commercials, every single talking point on his commercial, literally, I have to calm myself when I watch it because I want to scream at the TV, because everything he claims to fix, he was the direct cause of.
Right.
And I think to myself, do you really think that voters are that dumb?
Right. And they do. They absolutely do. And sadly, a lot of voters just aren't paying attention, or they're listening to their TV. And so they believe what they're hearing on, on King 5 or Como or whatever they listen to every night as they're getting dinner ready. And they believe that to be the truth. And it's really unfortunate that we have a media that is, totally in bed with the Democrats and untrustworthy. And so people don't have good information, and really, like, we as a people are lazy, right? We're not going to go look for the truth unless we're pained enough to do so, which, both you and I have been, pained in some way that had us seeking the truth. So, our 5 areas of focus, which is First Amendment, Second Amendment, parental rights, education, and the right to life. And you and I did one of these videos back in 2022 when you were running the first time. So some of this might be a repeat, and so I apologize, but you've probably forgotten by now. So we can do this afresh for the new audience in this election cycle. Since you and I last did this in 2022, the Washington State Legislature has really, I guess, pun intended here, but assaulted the Second Amendment.
Yes, yes.
And I know that's something that you're very passionate about. So can you talk a little bit about like where we are now and what you see your role in protecting or restoring the Second Amendment in Washington to be?
The Second Amendment, like you said, it takes your hot button to get you involved. I was talking to a young man yesterday who was fascinated that he was talking to somebody running for office, and he's basically said that he doesn't get involved in politics. And I said, you will one day when they do something that affects you personally, and that's what it takes. For me, it was Second Amendment when they really started infringing on our rights. I started going down to the Capitol, testifying at committees, and then watching these testimonies be 10,000 to 100, and they still would pass it. They blatantly ignore the popular opinion, and it's a long road because we're going to have to fight it through the judicial process and through legislation, and we're in such a minority that through legislation is going to be a hard fought battle. Unfortunately, a lot of times with overstep and how they put the emergency riders and all of the gun control bills that made them instantly law, so that it makes it even harder to overturn in the judicial process. A lot of times that process takes 10 to 20 years to get it up to the high enough courts to turn it around. The Supreme Court is starting to really address that with the New York case of concealed carry that changed a lot of that, and reciprocity and gun rights in general. And the Ninth Circuit, who's traditionally been very anti-gun, has been ordered so many times to look at it again because they got it wrong, that they're starting to come around. But we're going to have to rely again on groups like Washington Gun Law and individual lawsuits to continue to move forward while working on the legislation for it. But at the base of the issue, the Washington state constitution has been ignored and trampled on in addition to our federal constitution. Theoretically, the Washington state constitution uses verbiage that's even stronger than
Right.
shall not be impaired. It's frustrating because even when you announce to run for office, you have to click a box that says, I promise to uphold the Constitution of Washington, United States, just to even run. And then when you get sworn into office, and obviously it means nothing to these people.
Right.
To me, I firmly stand by the gun is not the problem. The person is the problem. A criminal mind, a sick mind, or a mentally ill person is going to do ill will no matter what tool is given to them, no matter whether they can get it or not, they'll find a way, because that's what mental illness does. And we continue to blame the tool and not the person, while at the same time, the party in power claims that they care about the mental health of all these people, yet we've allowed Western State Hospital to lose its certification. I argued this during the Seattle Times endorsement interview that we're not funding mental health, and they tried to tell me we are. I said, then how did Western states lose their certification? How is it that I've had multiple people come up to me to say that they're suicide counselors or crisis counselors and they can't find beds for people?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the problem. And I'm a firm believer too that everything the government touches, they generally do it wrong. So you can't even trust the red flag laws. They sound good on paper, but they'll abuse them. So
Absolutely.
I am against gun control in all forms. It's a personal goal of mine in my retirement. I'm going to own a tank and I'm going to drive it around in parades because I can. So I firmly am that, criminals are the problem, not the guns. So I'm going to do everything in my power to restore gun rights to the way Washington used to be. This was an outdoorsman and sportsman's paradise, and we have forgotten that.
Yeah.
So I got my A rating from the NRA, which is it's A qualified, which is the highest you can get without already holding office and having a voting record. My opponent got a B, and then the Democrat didn't even file for rating, obviously.
Wow.
So I am an advocate of the Second Amendment through and through. I'm an enthusiast. I build guns. I make my own guns, which you can't do now either under Washington state law. You can't even order parts. They won't deliver parts to you from out of state. So it's going to require us winning some seats. It's going to require a lot of, legal warfare, but we will get there. It's unfortunately, it took us 40 years to get in this mess. It's going to take a while to get out of it, but we, the people running for office, and we, the people that vote, need to vote and run our way out of this.
Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because one of the things that we try to do is educate people on, where we're at and where we're trying to go, and being realistic in our expectations of how we're going to get there, because it's not going to be one election cycle. It's not going to be one candidate. It is going to be a number of years, decades, maybe, to start turning this around. People need to see this as a marathon, not a sprint, and manage their expectations accordingly. Like, we're not going to elect Brandon Beynon and he's going to go in there and, with his cape on and save the day. I mean, that would be great, but that's not how the process works. And so you'll be in there fighting for the Second Amendment, and basically what you would be doing in the short term is trying to hold off a lot of bad legislation, because that's really what the Republican duty is now, whether they do it or not. But that's what we see it as, is the Republicans need to be holding the line. And, as we all know, that's not happening party wide. But you would be that voice. You would be one of those people that would hold the line, and not just on the First Amendment, but on many other issues as well. Was there anything else you wanted to say regarding Second Amendment?
No, kind of exactly what you said. We need to play defense to continue to stop this from going further, because it's an incremental process. And as we play defense, the the beautiful thing is that we are good at playing defense because the Democrats haven't had to do it in so long. And as Jim Walsh has stated, the initiatives were a great step to disarming them this year because they actually had to address something that came from our side. And it slowed down a lot of bad policy. The problem is they're very expensive. They're very difficult. We can't initiative our way out of this, but it is one of the many tools. But we need to continue to apply the pressure and continue to use every bit of parliamentary procedure to slow them down. Because at this point, frankly, if the Washington state legislature is doing nothing, that's probably better than doing something.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I always joke with people, like if I was elected in Washington state, I just sit down and all session long, I just vote no on everything.
but amend the crap out of everything and just
right.
And want to have discussions and committees and research and just drag it on as long as possible.
The leadership would hate me, and they'd make sure I got primaried probably by a Democrat and got out.
Well, I have said that it's my goal to be one of the least liked people by the people in Olympia I'm with, because there's a handful of good ones, but there's plenty of bad ones.
Yeah. And that's unfortunate because, Washington, and I don't know about you, but I was born and raised in Washington. I, lived my entire life, raised my own kids in Washington state. And so it's difficult to see it, going the way it is. And sometimes it feels like we just don't have any opposition except for, as you said, a handful of people. So we just need to keep adding to that handful of people.
And I think that comes from candidates like myself and incumbents like Jim McEwen and guys like Jesse Young, people that have the courage to stand out, the courage to be loud, to scream at the top of their lungs and make a scene about things. And again, to bring average, real world common sense down to Olympia, not political common sense. And I'm so tired of hearing people say, well, we need to work across the aisle. Why? We don't need to work across the aisle because they need nothing from us. The only time you'd want to work across the aisle is if they need something in return. But we lose one more seat and we're in a super minority and there's going to be a world of hurt.
Yes. Yes. And I don't know, like I have seen just in these last few years that I've been engaged, like we need to work across the aisle, because if we, give them, if we compromise on this, then they'll compromise over here and give us what we want. That never happens.
No,
it's not a two-way street.
No. And I mean, what's the penalty on their side for lying to us? Okay, sign our bill. No, we're not going to sign yours. None.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I have had conversations with legislators in the last couple of sessions where they talk about, some of the deals that are being made. And I'm like, what's in it for you? Like, what's the payoff for you?
Yeah.
I'm like, because they're just going to get what they want anyway. Yep. And you're going to disenfranchise your voters because you've just made a deal with the devil, and your voters are like, why should I bother voting if my Republican representative isn't even going to vote my values?
Yep. And if they're shoving it down our throats, we get to use that in the public eye to continue to say, look at against our opposition and against the testimony of the people, they're still doing this. We need to vote these people out.
Right. And that's, as you're well aware, that's one of the things that we've tried to do through Conservative Ladies of Washington is really shining a light on what's going on, whether it's just educating people about the policies that are being made, but also showing the roll call votes, showing people, here's how your reps voted on both sides of the aisle, because citizens deserve transparency, and we need to be electing candidates that are willing to give that transparency. And I fully believe that you are the kind of person that will give your constituents and citizens across the state that kind of transparency.
Yeah. I believe in being boisterous and loud if things aren't working to bring as much attention to the situation as possible. I've dealt with things in the law enforcement side where friends that are police officers give advice to people that say, a loud victim is hard to ignore. And we need to take that same mentality, because we've sat down and rolled over and taken our beatings. And it's time that we make noise about it, because the people that really aren't politically savvy, that just go about their lives, they need to hear what's going on. Because so often, and this was, again, kind of part of what got me to run in 2022. So often people go, "Did you hear about what they passed in Olympia?" They don't know until it's already passed.
Right.
They've missed the opportunity to be engaged, because being engaged at this point is a proactive
Yes.
thing, and most of our voters are reactive, and we need representatives that can try to turn those reactive people into proactive people.
Amen. I had Jim McCune on earlier today, and he sits on the Senate Education Committee, and he was saying that the House or I'm sorry, the education chair always gets annoyed when I or other team members from Conservative Ladies is on deck to testify. He said it just annoys her, and she's very vocal about it in the committee. And I said, you know what? That's great. I am happy to be that person that annoys her. I'm happy that every time she sees Conservative Ladies, she gets irritated and frustrated, because for far too long, she's been, this whole education committee and all of the committees have had zero resistance.
Yep.
And so now we show up, we're always polite, we're always respectful, but you have to listen to us. You may not agree with us, but now you have to listen to us.
Yep. I agree. And that's the start of it again. I mean,
Yep.
like with the assault weapons ban, where it broke a all-time record of the most feedback ever, and they still ignored it. That needs to be continued to shine light on that how little the people in Olympia understand that they're our representatives, that they represent our voice, that we empower them to make decisions. They're not our leaders, they are our representatives, and we need to bring that back, because I think that disconnect has happened. They've forgotten who they work for and who empowers them.
Yep. So aside from the Second Amendment, I just mentioned the Education Committee is I think education is one of the issues on your website. I know you're dialed into what's going on with the government education in Washington. What it's as you're well aware, it's hard for Republicans to advance any kind of legislation. But what are your thoughts on our current education system? And a lot of people are asking about school choice. Another thing I want to ask you about or have you address is the Senator Wellman on the Education Committee has been playing around with some legislation for the last few sessions, trying to tap into regulations on homeschooling, and I'd be curious your thoughts on that as well.
The new initiative that makes the parents the primary decision maker in a child's education. Again, the wording of that initiative is the basis for us to start to run more bills on of the parents taking the power away from the government and the schools and returning it to the parents. As we've talked before, I am a huge fan of funding follows the child, to allow parents to set up homeschool co-ops or charter schools, whatever the parent desires should be where they're. I mean, if our money is coming out for taxes, it should be able to be used for us to let our children learn the way we want to. In a unrelated but somewhat related, when I was growing up, my parents were so unhappy with the school district I was in, they had to apply for a special dispensation to allow me to go to a school district in another city, because the school district in our city was so bad. And that, had I not been able to do that, I might not be sitting here. I could have a worse education and, a less of a future, who knows? But we need to let the parents be the primary stakeholder, like the initiative says, in our children's education and our future. We need to take the government's ability to tell us where they go, what they're learning, what they're eating, now they're telling them how to think, not, or what to think, not how to think. Clear curriculum, no strings attached to funding. I've gotten some memos from Stand for Health Freedom, who also endorses me, that the WHO is pushing legislators that are actually pushing funding to follow the children to make vaccine requirements part of that. And that's, again, the government trying to be the parent of the children. If you want to set up a homeschool co-op and everybody in your co-op wants to agree to the same requirements, that's great, but the government doesn't get to make that decision for you. And so no strings attached funding for the child to follow, follows the child is an absolute priority for me. And clear curriculum. I am disgusted at what the sex ed curriculum has become.
Yeah.
Uh, reproduction is what we were taught, not what they're teaching now. And
Right.
the Seattle Times tried to give me a hard time about my belief in that too, and shame me and think that I was homophobic. That has nothing to do with reproductive education or sexual education. It needs to stay out. I don't understand where we suddenly started treating everybody like they're special. It's a simple thing. We just need to teach kids how to think. We need to teach them the basics and teach them how to solve problems on their own, and let them and their parents develop into the adults they were. It was going fine. Humankind was doing just fine until Washington decided that they needed to be our second parent.
Right. Right. And have you read yet the book Queer Theory by Logan Lansing and James Lindsay?
I have not.
Not Queer Theory, The Queering of the American Child.
No, I have not.
I believe that should be required reading for every single lawmaker. So there's your homework.
All righty.
I'll send you a copy on election night when you at your victory party. I'll send you a copy. I'll Amazon it to you. But I read that when it first came out, and as I was reading through it, I thought, because you go to Olympia as a legislator, and you are having to vote on bills across the spectrum. You don't just get to vote on the bills that are within your scope of expertise or your area of passion. You're voting on everything, and you can't possibly know everything about everything.
Yeah.
But I think if we're going to save this country, it starts with our children, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have a generation of children that they are trying to destroy.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important for lawmakers to understand what the agenda is and how it's being used and pushed into policy and the education system. And it was enlightening to me, and I think should be required reading. So
I find it interesting that the same legislators who increased the smoking age to 21 because they said that the frontal lobe is not developed enough to make choices like that then said, oh, you can't put caffeine in alcoholic drinks. They have to redesign it because kids are drinking it even though they're not supposed to be, and legally they can't buy it, but now they're drinking it and it's harming them. They're not actually concerned about the fact that the kids were underage drinking. And, oh, well, we better raise long guns to 21 too because they're just not developed, but we're going to let them take hormone blockers at 12.
Right.
And permanently alter themselves. I wanted to be a pirate when I was a child. My parents weren't going to let me cut my eye out and give myself a peg leg.
Right.
It blows me away that that same legislator with a straight face could say all of those things and then say it's totally okay for a child to control his own future with the egging on of a school nurse or somebody against their own parents' will, even that the parents' insurance is going to have to pay for this stuff.
Yeah.
And not even know what you're paying for because
or taxpayers.
Yeah, exactly. So, if that's what you want to be as an adult, that's on you. But as a parent, I want to be able to control my child's ability to have a fair future. And they can spin it all they want, but there's a firm correlation to putting these children on these and suicide rates and mental health issues later down the road.
100%. I don't know if you've been on X this afternoon before we hopped on, but Outrage PNW posted about a bill that just got signed. Was it this week or last week? But it's House Bill 1742. It was passed this session. Sorry, this is kind of a tangent, but it goes a little bit along with what we're talking about. But it is about child pornography. Teens caught sexting in Washington will no longer be treated as criminals. So if you're sending nudes to, it's for teenagers 13 to 17. But here's part of the bill will ease penalties for teens who distribute naked photos of other teens who are within the same age group. So if one of your peers at school is sending naked pictures of you around, that's okay.
Yeah,
Like,
there's no consequence for that.
yeah, I mean, it's just absurd.
Yeah, I
Just
agree.
absolutely absurd.
I follow Outrage Northwest. I like that account. So
Yeah.
they make good points. I again, I just you have to wonder the people that are voting for these, do they not have children? I just can't imagine in my right mind why I would propose a bill like that and be a parent with a good conscience. I mean that's not even a good yeah, no.
And I haven't looked at the roll call vote on that. I'm going to do that
Yeah.
next, but and hopefully it's a party line vote because otherwise I won't like that.
Well,
But
be
yeah,
sure to
it's this
call
is
out those that aren't.
we just need common sense, and I think it frustrates me to see a common sense candidate like yourself, a constitutional conservative, a businessman, a family man, someone that is willing to give up your, um, you know, kind of, I mean, you're going to have to give up a lot of your
Yep.
business stuff and your personal endeavors to go and do this for Washington and be a public servant for Washington.
Yep.
And I really struggle with I know that the House Republican caucus is dumping a lot of money into your opponent's campaign. And so when I see things like that, I'm like, really? Can we not use this money and these efforts against races where we have to get a Republican, we need to pick up a seat, or we have a seat that's at risk? This seat isn't at risk. So it's all these bad policies, and then we have all these political games, and it's very frustrating.
And it reaffirms to me that they're scared of me, which reaffirms to me I'm exactly doing the right thing.
Yes.
HROC is supposed to be there to fund incumbents or swing seats. As you said, there is 0% chance the Democrat wins this race. They knew for a fact I was going to run, but instead of letting the best man win, the Reagan Fund and HROC are dumping money into my moderate establishment Seattle Times endorsed opponent, which that tells you a lot right there. There's 3 Republicans on the Seattle Times endorsement that the Seattle Times now has even gone from center left to far left because most of their editors came from the Stranger now. And as Phil Fortunato says, I wouldn't want the endorsement. The fact that my opponent is endorsed by them and that HROC is funding him and the Reagan Fund is funding him says to me that our party's priorities are absolutely wrong, and that we have become in such a minority and gotten so used to losing that it's not even about furthering our party or trying to fix the state. It's the people that are there trying to hold on to their dear lives for whatever reason because they want their minor insignificant bit of power. I would do this job for free. I'm not in this for anything other than to fix it. I'm going to suffer immensely to do this job. I already have to some degree suffered immensely. And then to watch people within our own machine working against me tells me how broken Olympia is. It's not a partisan thing. It is just absolutely broken from top to bottom.
It really is. And I can say that, our organization has met with that same resistance in Olympia by the Republic, and I always tell people we are not affiliated with the Republican Party. We are unaffiliated politically. We pride ourselves on being constitutional, conservatives, independent. But of course, we're going to work with the Republicans because we don't agree with Democrats at all.
Yeah.
And so we see ourselves as being a support to the Republicans, and we feel like we're on the same team. But there has been so much resistance, especially it's just gotten worse over time. This was our 3rd year being involved in the legislature, and every week of session it gets worse. And people are told, legislators are told not to work with us, not to talk to us, and it's really a slap in the face because we are volunteers, we are citizens, we are just trying to make things better.
Yeah.
And, to have that kind of resistance by the Republicans, it's not all of them, but it's a good chunk of them, that don't want our voices, that would rather us just sit down, shut up, go away,
Yeah.
and let us play our political games here.
Yeah.
And
Because
families are being destroyed over this.
the people sitting up there continue to think the same thing. They're following the losing strategy that has lost us 8 seats, and that has lost us seats year after year. The old cliche of the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Yet that is what the establishment seems to hold on to. And the Republican Party has become a very large tent as the left has gone so far left. I've seen a lot of Democrats come into our fold now that are centrists, that call themselves moderates, and they make some of our establishment politicians look left leaning. These Democrats that have come over, and we've become the home for the independents. We've become a home for the libertarians. There is a big tent here, but it's crazy that it seems like a lot of the people in Olympia have just completely lost touch with anything other than themselves and the money. I think that you're told, let's be dead honest. I think the reason that you're being told not to be worked with is because you're not a lobbyist. There's not skin in the game. There's not money there. That's the sad thing that it's really become, because I think Atrox dumping more money into my opponent because I started fundraising. I got a late start. My fundraising's kicking up. They thought they could get away with just giving him $5,000, and we got it in the bag. And they went, he's starting to raise some decent money. We better dump more money into this seat that's going to be Republican either way, but we need to make sure to get the guy that's going to listen to us in there, not the guy that's going to represent the people.
Right.
So that alone should tell you who to vote for when the party themselves don't want me in there because I said that I work for the people and not the party.
Yeah. Yep. And in 2022, they dumped a lot more than what they are now into your opponent, because you were challenging an incumbent who is now the House Minority Leader, who took a victory lap on Twitter after the election that said, establishment always wins. How nice.
I have saved that picture, and
Me too.
If I do win my seat, I'm framing it and it's going in my office, and it's going to be there for the entire time I'm in session, and I'm going to ask him to autograph it.
I was going to say, you need to get an autograph on that.
He probably won't, but I'm going to ask him to autograph.
No, he won't.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Any other policy issues that you want to be sure and touch on? Any campaign points that you'd like people to know about your campaign and what you want to do in Olympia?
Well, I think the biggest priorities, like we've said, are to protect families, restore gun rights, and honestly, by far and away, bring affordability back into Washington. Try to find ways to lower inflation and cost of doing business. The insurance commissioner is a big race. The fact that they removed credit scores from our insurance rates made everybody have to pay more. The fact that they've let crime run rampant makes everybody pay more in insurance. My rates have gone up as a contractor from theft, and the rates of all of our vendors have gone up. Getting gas taxes back under control, making sure that after the initiative passes for the cap and trade, that they don't try to AG Ferguson their way out of it like they've done our $30 car tabs, to ensure that goes through. We can look at going back to some old taxes like the 2005 nickel tax and getting that repealed. Basically, I think cost of living and family values have to be primary drivers for this session going forward to multiple sessions, because the cost of living is out of control here. And I've watched it on a personal level, out of my own bank account, out of my company's bank account, out of my clients' expenses, and out of my employees' cost of living. I think we've had to have something in the nature of like 15 rate increases over the past 4 years.
Wow.
And salaries are not keeping up with that, and everybody's watching it. So cost of living we've got to find a way to go in and look at these budgets and look at, over the past, we've had a 500% increase in our state revenue while we only had a 14% increase in the population. Where is all that money going? Our roads have gotten worse. Our road sides are shameful. I'm ashamed when people come visit this state to take them anywhere. We need to look at all of these past policies, where the money's gone, what's not working, and start scrubbing the books. We've got to get money back in people's pockets.
Yep. Amen. And with the family values, that encompasses so many different things, right? That can be like public safety and
Yep.
taxes for your there's a lot of different taxes that have been added here in the last few years. It seems like there's always something, but healthcare and education and all of those things. I mean, family values is so like large and all encompassing of so many
Yep.
different issues. So
Yeah.
I think that's great. Tell people how they can support you and support your campaign.
You can go on my website, which is letsgobrandonforwa.com. There's a donate link on there. Campaigns are expensive, and unfortunately, it's the dirty part of politics you cannot get away from, no matter how you want to do this. Even if you want to self-fund your campaign, you will be judged by not having donors.
Right.
The powers that be that judge the legitimacy of candidates and vet you and help you when you're in office is whether you can fundraise, how much you can fundraise, and just the sheer amount of people that are willing to give you their hard-earned money. One thing I will say is if you go look at my donor roll, it is nothing but names. It is people.
And I just did that tonight before we came on, and that is facts.
Yep. It is, I have not taken a dime from a lobbyist or a PAC. If it's nothing but names, all of these people support me, know me, have conversed with me, talked with me, some of which have just heard from me. I've had a few people from other districts call me to say, I'm friends with Jim McEwen. He's told me a lot about you. Tell me about yourself. I'm looking to donate some money, some good quality conservative Christian candidates, and have donated money. But again, it's word of mouth. And again, the names are as important as the amounts, just showing that these people support you. So feel free to go on my website, learn about me. It's a very long-winded website. You can take as little or as long into it. It tells you about me. It tells you about my family, where we met. I mean, the whole gamut and what I stand for. But on there is a donate button, and anything helps from $5 to $1,200. I mean, mailers are expensive. Text messages are expensive. Pamphlets are expensive. The whole thing. And
and so if you're watching tonight or on replay and you're from a different district, please just help out by going to letsgobrandonforwa.com and chip in $5, or if you can do 10 or $20, even better. But just to get that volume of donors is really helpful. So would request that you guys, if you can give a little or a lot, that'd be great. letsgobrandonforwa.com.
And I was recently on the Art Hoffman show, and he gave me credit for the most creative and best website of any person running for office. He loved the Let's Go Brandon for Wall logo.
Yeah, I love it too. And I don't know if your merch is for sale, but if it is, hopefully it's on the website as well.
We just got t-shirts in. I haven't really put them up for sale, but if there is interest, I will happily do so.
Yeah, it's a cool slogan, and maybe after the primary, that's you'll have a chance to catch your breath for just a minute. And
let's remind people to vote for the primary, because it's
yes, that's what I was like, there was something I was gonna say. We are a week out from the primary. Get your ballots in ASAP. You don't need to wait for August 6th. And please don't wait for August 6th. I know in previous elections, we said, hold your ballot until election day. But now we're asking you to get your ballot into a drop box, not a mailbox, a drop box. And get that in before the 6th, because it actually helps your candidates know how many ballots they need to get in. And so I've put our election center website here in the on the screen here for you. You can go to our website, conservativeladiesofwa.com. And then if you pull down our legislative action center, there's an election center there, and it's specific to your address. So you can go there and find drop boxes near your location. And a lot of other election resources as well. You can even see what's on your ballot if you don't have yours, and find out how to get in touch with your county auditor if you need a new ballot or something like that.
Speaking of county auditors, a lot of people didn't get their voter pamphlets in, I believe, Pierce County. About half of the voters did not get voter pamphlets. If you don't have one and you're struggling to figure out about candidates, it is online. You can go to the Pierce County website and see an online version of it. They're supposedly emergency mailing out as of yesterday all of the missing pamphlets, so they should be in there. But again, get your ballots in early, get them in the box. Don't mail them, just take them directly to the box. For people that are worried about election integrity, most of the integrity problems are happening before it gets to the box. You're good when they get to the box. What we really need to do is focus on the fact, like Thurston County had about 200,000 registered voters, but they openly published that they printed 205,000 ballots. There's the problem.
Nice. Yeah. That's a problem. Awesome. Well, Brandon, I appreciate you taking the time to join us tonight and tell us about yourself and your campaign. And I appreciate you being willing to step up and be a servant of the people and do this job, because I know in Washington especially, it is a very tough job. And so I appreciate you being willing to do it. And we will support you 100% all the way, and look forward to having you to work with in Olympia. So everybody, please don't forget to head over to letsgobrandonforwa.com and send Brandon a donation. And if you're not already signed up for our emails, head over to conservativeladiesofwa.com and you can sign up for those as well. Thanks for joining us tonight or on replay, and we'll see you again next time.
Thank you very much for having me.
You bet.